Let me tell you something about rock bottom. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not some dramatic moment where the world collapses around you in a single heartbeat. No, rock bottom is slow. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's realizing you've been treading water for years, thinking you were swimming, only to look up one day and see you've barely moved. That was my life. I was broke. Not just the kind of broke where money was tight for a few weeks. I mean truly, devastatingly broke. Bills piled up like they were breeding. My fridge was empty, except for a half-full bottle of expired milk and some leftovers I was too afraid to throw out because they might still be edible. My job was killing me slowly, a mind-numbing, soul-crushing grind that barely paid me enough to keep the lights on. And yet, I had convinced myself that things would get better, that hard work and perseverance would pay off, that someday I'd be the guy who had it all. But Vanessa had no interest in waiting for someday. I should have seen it coming. The late replies, the sudden urge to dress better, the way she kept talking about how we needed to expand our social circle, which really just meant she wanted to hang around richer people. But I was too blind, too stupid, too in love to see the signs. So when she sat across from me in that tiny coffee shop and said, "Jake, we need to talk," I still had the audacity to hope. She wasn't nervous, wasn't even upset. She was just bored. Like I was some part-time job she was ready to quit. "I can't do this anymore," she said, stirring her overpriced latte like she hadn't just thrown a grenade into my life. "Struggling, waiting for you to make it. I need stability, Jake, security, and I've found someone who can give me that." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What are you saying?" My voice came out quieter than I intended. She sighed, shaking her head like she actually pitied me. "I'm saying I met someone. Ethan." That name hit me like a freight train. Ethan, as in Ethan Carter, CEO, rich, powerful. The same guy I had introduced her to a year ago at a networking event because I thought he could help me find a better job. Turns out, he had found something better instead. Her. "You're kidding," I muttered. She wasn't. "Look, you're sweet, Jake, but you have no ambition, no drive, and I can't keep pretending like you're going to suddenly become someone important." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for her to say this was all some sick joke. But she just picked up her phone, barely even looking at me as she texted someone. Probably him. And just like that, it was over. I sat there long after she left, staring at the untouched coffee in front of me. My whole body felt numb. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. Because deep down, a small, ugly part of me thought maybe she was right. Maybe I really was just another loser who was never going to make it. The next few years were a blur. I drowned myself in work, took every extra shift I could get, but no amount of overtime was enough to drown out the thoughts screaming in my head. Everywhere I turned, there she was. Vanessa and Ethan, the perfect power couple. Their lives looked like a goddamn magazine spread. Luxury vacations, Michelin-star dinners, gifts that cost more than my entire salary. And me? I was still here, in my shoebox of an apartment, eating instant noodles and trying to pretend I wasn't dying inside. I told myself I was fine, that I didn't need her. But at night, when I was walking home from work, exhausted and alone, it hit me. She had been right about one thing. I had no ambition, no plan, no way to change my life. And that was the worst part. Not losing her, not even Ethan taking her away. The worst part was realizing I had never been enough. The night it happened, I wasn't thinking about much of anything. I was just another overworked, underpaid guy trudging home in the dark. The city was quiet, the streets half empty, and my mind was too exhausted to do anything but go through the motions. Step, breathe, step, breathe. I barely even heard the car coming. One second, I was on the sidewalk. The next, there were headlights. Blinding. Fast. Too fast. I barely had time to react before the impact hit me like a wrecking ball. My body went flying, pain exploded through me, and then I was on the ground, my lungs gasping for air that wouldn't come. Everything hurt. I couldn't move, could barely think. Somewhere in the distance, I heard footsteps, a voice, someone muttering curses. The driver, maybe. But they didn't call for help. They just ran. My vision blurred, the world tilting. And then I heard something else. Laughter. Vanessa's laughter. I traded up, she had said once, smiling like she was doing me a favor. The sound of it echoed in my head as the darkness closed in. I had wasted my life, wasted my chances. If I had just been smarter, faster, stronger, maybe I could have changed everything. Maybe I could have been the one in the penthouse, not Ethan. Maybe I could have been... No maybes, no what-ifs. If I had another chance, I'd do it all differently. And then everything went black. I expected death, expected nothingness. But instead I woke up, not in a hospital, not in the afterlife. I woke up in my old apartment. Same messy room, same cheap furniture, same Vanessa sleeping next to me. I shot up, my heart hammering. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. March 2018. I nearly dropped it. March 2018. 5 years ago. I stumbled to the mirror, my hands shaking. My reflection stared back at me. Younger, thinner, no stress lines. I touched my face, feeling my own skin like I didn't believe it was real. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. A dream? A hallucination? Had I survived the crash and just lost my mind? But then I turned back toward the bed, and there she was. Vanessa, still here, still mine. I just stared at her. Because I knew what was coming. I knew that today she was going to meet Ethan, that in a few years she would leave me in a Starbucks, telling me I had no ambition, that I would spend years chasing a dream I would never catch, only to die alone in the street. But now I had years of knowledge. Now I wasn't going to beg her to stay. Now I wasn't going to waste my time proving myself to people who never believed in me. Now I was going to win. This time, everything would be different. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white, staring at the date on the screen like it was some kind of cruel joke. March 7th, 2018. 5 years ago. 5 years before I got crushed under the weight of my own failures. 5 years before Vanessa left me for Ethan. 5 years before I worked myself to the bone, trying to prove I wasn't the loser she thought I was, only to die on a cold, wet street, alone. But now I was back. My breath came fast and shallow. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. This had to be a dream, a hallucination. Maybe I hadn't died at all. Maybe I was just in a coma, my brain playing tricks on me. But then I turned my head, and there she was. Vanessa, still asleep beside me, curled up in my sheets like she belonged there. For a moment, I just watched her, a mix of emotions knotting in my stomach. This woman destroyed me, broke me into pieces so small I didn't think I'd ever put myself back together. And yet, looking at her now, I could still feel that instinctive pull, that stupid part of me that still thought she was the best thing that ever happened to me. That part of me needed to die. I took a shaky breath and turned my attention back to my phone. I needed proof. I needed to be sure this was real. I opened a news app, scrolling through the headlines, and there it was, the exact same stories I remembered. A tech company hyping up a product that was destined to flop. A minor celebrity caught in a scandal that would explode in the coming weeks. A stock market shift that would send certain companies soaring while others crashed. I knew what was going to happen before it did. And if that was true, if this was really happening, then that meant I had a chance to change everything. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. 5 years of memories flooded my mind at once. Every mistake, every failure, every wasted opportunity. I had spent so much time chasing after Vanessa, trying to prove I was worth something. And for what? So she could leave me anyway? So I could end up alone? And broke while she lived the high life with Ethan? No, not this time. I looked at her again, my gaze hardening. In a few hours, she was going to meet Ethan for the first time. Back then, I hadn't even noticed. I had been too busy trying to keep my own life from falling apart to realize she was already looking for a way out. I remembered how she had started dressing differently, wearing more expensive perfume, checking her phone a little too often with a smile she never used on me. I had ignored it, convinced myself I was just overthinking. But now I saw everything. She stirred beside me, stretching with a soft sigh. "Morning," she murmured, her voice still thick with sleep. "Why are you up so early?" I almost laughed. If only she knew. "Couldn't sleep," I said instead, keeping my tone even. She yawned, rolling over to face me. Her brown eyes met mine, still half-lidded with drowsiness. I was thinking we could go out for dinner tonight. Maybe that sushi place downtown?" A couple of years from now, she wouldn't even pretend to care about dinner with me. A month from now, she'd be sneaking around behind my back, spending more and more time with Ethan until one day she finally sat me down and told me I was too small for the life she wanted. I smiled at her, but it wasn't the same smile I would have given her 5 years ago. "We'll see," I said vaguely, already knowing I wouldn't be around to entertain her requests much longer. I got out of bed and headed straight for my laptop. If I had one advantage in this world now, it was knowledge. I had 5 years of foresight. 5 years of knowing exactly what would rise and what would fall. Stocks, crypto, businesses. I knew where to put my money, even if I didn't have much to start with yet. I started making a list, writing down every investment opportunity I could remember. Bitcoin was still cheap, Ethereum was still in its early days. There were tech startups that would explode in value within the next few years. I could turn a few thousand into millions if I played my cards right. Vanessa's voice broke through my thoughts. "Babe, what are you doing?" I glanced at her over my shoulder. She was sitting up now, running a hand through her hair as she squinted at me. This was the moment I would have normally dropped everything to give her attention. The old me would have been afraid to make her feel ignored, but that Jake was dead. "Working on something?" I said simply, turning back to my screen. She pouted. "Come back to bed for a little bit." I stared at her for a beat too long, remembering how she had smiled just like that when she told me she hoped we could still be friends after ripping my heart out. I remembered how she had walked away without a second thought, into a life of luxury that I was never good enough for. This time, I wasn't going to wait around for her to destroy me again. This time, I was going to be the one who walked away first. I sat in front of my laptop, the screen casting a dim glow over my cluttered desk, my fingers tapping restlessly against the keyboard. This was it, the moment everything started. I had 5 years of knowledge. 5 years of watching trends rise and fall. 5 years of seeing which businesses exploded and which ones crumbled into dust. And now I had the chance to use it. I opened a new tab and pulled up a cryptocurrency exchange. Bitcoin was sitting at around $8,000, Ethereum barely $500. In a few years, those numbers would be laughable. I had watched people become millionaires, billionaires even, because they got in at the right time. I had also watched myself hesitate, doubt, make excuses about not having enough money, and let the opportunity slip right through my fingers. But not this time. I didn't have much. My bank account had a little over $1,200, and most of that was meant for rent and bills. If I was going to do this, I needed more cash. Fast. A dangerous idea crossed my mind. I leaned back in my chair, chewing on the inside of my cheek. A loan. A small one, just enough to invest before the next bull run started. Back in my old life, I had been terrified of debt, always too cautious to take a risk. But what had that gotten me? Nothing. If I played this right, the return would be life-changing. It only took me 30 minutes to apply for a personal loan. $5,000. The bank wouldn't approve it instantly, but I knew I had enough credit history for a quick approval. That money, combined with everything I had, would be my first real step toward building my fortune. I checked the charts again, my heart pounding with anticipation. I was about to buy the very investments I used to daydream about. Only this time, I wasn't too late. This time, I was ahead of the curve. While waiting for the funds to hit my account, I needed another source of quick cash. I wasn't about to sit around waiting for the market to work its magic. The old me would have kept grinding away at my dead-end job, living paycheck to paycheck, hoping things would eventually improve. The new me? I wasn't waiting for opportunities to come to me. I was creating them. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through online marketplaces. Sneakers. That was where I'd start. The resale market was a gold mine, and I already knew which drops would skyrocket in value. In a few months, a limited run of Jordans would release and resell for triple their retail price. Supreme, Yeezys, designer collabs, people were willing to pay stupid money for exclusivity. I checked my savings again. I could afford to grab a couple of pairs from local sellers at a decent profit margin. I didn't need to make thousands overnight. I just needed to build momentum. Phones were another easy flip. People sold used iPhones all the time, usually underpriced because they didn't want to deal with buyers. I could buy them cheap, clean them up, unlock them, and resell them for double the price. I already knew which models would hold their value. I had wasted so much time in my old life looking for a big break, but the truth was, money wasn't made in big breaks. It was made in small, smart decisions stacked on top of each other. The best part? I had zero emotional attachment to the process. I wasn't doing this because I was desperate. I wasn't scared. I wasn't blindly hoping it would work out. I already knew it would. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification. Loan approved. I exhaled slowly, staring at the screen. $5,000 sitting in my account. I didn't hesitate. I didn't overthink. I transferred everything into my exchange account and went all in. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a few altcoins I remembered skyrocketing in the future. Back in my old life, I had watched these same investments make people fortunes while I stood on the sidelines, too scared to take the plunge. This time, I was done being scared. A strange sense of calm settled over me as I shut my laptop. The money was invested. The path was set. Now all I had to do was let time do its work. But there was still one more thing I needed to do. I found Vanessa in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, one hand absent-mindedly stirring a cup of coffee. She looked up when she saw me, flashing me a half smile. She still thought she had me wrapped around her finger. "Morning?" she said casually, like everything was normal. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. I had thought about waiting, letting things play out, watching as she slowly drifted toward Ethan. But what was the point? I already knew how the story ended. She was going to leave eventually. This time, I wasn't going to waste my time pretending otherwise. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice cool. She raised an eyebrow. "Oh? About what?" I studied her for a moment. 5 years ago, I would have been a wreck, nervous, fumbling, trying to say the right thing to keep her happy. But not anymore. "I'm breaking up with you," I said flatly. Her expression froze for a split second. I saw it, the flicker of shock, the moment of disbelief. She had never expected this. She had never considered the possibility that I would leave first. Then she let out a small laugh, setting down her coffee. "Jake, don't be ridiculous." I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. "I'm not—" She blinked, fully processing what I'd just said. "You're serious?" "Yeah." I pushed off the counter, grabbing my keys. "It's not working. We both know that. I've got other things to focus on." Vanessa stared at me, her lips parting slightly. She was still trying to figure out what was happening. In her mind, I was supposed to be chasing after her. I was supposed to be scared of losing her. But I wasn't. Not even a little. "I don't get it," she said finally, her voice quieter. "I thought we were fine." I gave her a look. "We were never fine. You were just waiting for something better to come along." Her mouth opened like she wanted to deny it, but she knew. She knew. I didn't wait for her to come up with an excuse. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, feeling lighter than I had in years. She didn't call after me. She didn't beg me to stay, because she had never loved me enough to fight for me. The old me would have been devastated. The new me? I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. The first time I saw my portfolio double overnight, I almost laughed. Not out of shock. No, I had expected it. It was the laugh of a man watching a movie he had already seen 100 times. The markets were moving exactly as I remembered. Bitcoin had jumped from $8,000 to $12,000 in just a few months, and Ethereum wasn't far behind. Every part of me itched to scream at the world, to tell people, "You have no idea how big this is going to get." But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I let my money sit, because I knew this was only the beginning. Every morning I woke up checked my investments, and watched my wealth grow. I remembered when I used to watch the same charts in my old life, filled with regret, thinking about how I could have been one of those people who bought early. But regret was for people who didn't get a second chance. I had one, and I wasn't wasting it. By the time Bitcoin crossed $15,000, my initial investment had tripled. Ethereum was exploding as well, and the smaller altcoins I had bet on were steadily climbing. My $5,000 loan, the one that would have once terrified me, was now pocket change. I paid it off instantly, just to be safe, and started thinking bigger. Crypto was just my first move. Now it was time for step 2. I spent the next few weeks digging into the stock market, listing every company that I knew would skyrocket in the next 5 years. Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, early-stage AI startups, things that people weren't paying attention to yet. Back in my old life, I had seen people laugh at Tesla, calling it a doomed company. I had watched Amazon go from just an online bookstore to one of the most powerful corporations in the world. I knew which IPOs would break records, which startups would fail before they even had a chance. I started small, reinvesting some of my crypto profits, buying stocks that I knew would multiply. I wasn't greedy. I wasn't trying to time the market perfectly. I was playing the long game. And it was paying off fast. Money wasn't a problem anymore. My bank account was growing every single day. But money alone wasn't enough. I needed to level up. The first thing I did was move out of my old apartment. I found a place downtown, nothing crazy yet, but modern, sleek, and far away from the version of myself that used to struggle to make rent. The landlord barely glanced at my application. My new bank balance was enough proof that I was good for it. I furnished it exactly the way I wanted. No more secondhand furniture, no more clutter. Clean, minimalist, the kind of place a man on his way up should live in. Then I upgraded myself. I hit the gym, not out of desperation, but out of purpose. I remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to be the guy who got walked over, the guy who wasn't taken seriously. That wasn't going to be me anymore. I trained hard, cleaned up my diet, watched my body transform within months. The difference was night and day. My wardrobe followed. No more baggy hoodies and worn-out sneakers, tailored clothes, sharp watches, clean lines. I didn't need to be flashy. I just needed to look like a man who belonged in the rooms I was about to enter. Everywhere I went, I carried myself differently. I wasn't rushing, trying to prove something to people who didn't matter. I was already winning. It didn't take long for Vanessa to notice. I had expected it, of course. The way people talked, the way news traveled, it was inevitable. The guy she left behind? The loser, with no ambition? He wasn't struggling anymore. In fact, he was thriving. I was in a cafe downtown when I got the first message. "Hey, stranger, long time no talk." I almost laughed out loud. I stared at my phone, the same phone I had once obsessively checked, hoping she would text me back. Back then, her silence had destroyed me. Now, I barely felt a thing. I didn't respond. A few days later, another message. "I saw your new place. Looks amazing. Maybe we should catch up sometime?" She was testing the waters, looking for an opening, trying to see if she still had the same hold over me. She didn't. She never would again. I let her message sit there, unread. It must have driven her crazy because a week later, I ran into her in person. I was leaving a high-end men's boutique, fresh off picking up a new suit, when I heard someone say my name. Jake. I turned slowly, already knowing what I'd see. There she was, Vanessa. She looked exactly the same. Same perfectly styled hair, same expensive handbag, same practiced smile. But something was different now. She didn't look at me the way she used to, like I was someone she was barely tolerating. No, now she was curious. I let the silence stretch between us, watching as she shifted slightly under my gaze. "Wow," she said, laughing lightly. "You look different." "Yeah," I said simply. She bit her lip as if debating something. "I've been meaning to reach out. See how you've been?" I glanced at my watch, my disinterest obvious. "I've been good." Another beat of silence. Then she tilted her head, trying to soften her voice. "I miss talking to you, Jake. Maybe we could—" I didn't even let her finish. "Vanessa." I met her eyes, watching as she straightened slightly, sensing the shift in my tone. "We're not doing this." She blinked. "Doing what?" I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You've been wanting to walk away for a long time. You were just waiting for the right guy to come along. You thought I wasn't good enough. And that's fine, that was your choice. But I don't do second chances." For the first time, she looked nervous. Maybe she had expected me to hesitate. Maybe she thought I would still want her. She'd been so sure of herself when she left. So sure that I would always be waiting. But now she was standing in front of a man she didn't recognize. I didn't give her time to respond. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, speechless. For the first time in my life, I was ahead, and I wasn't slowing down for anyone. Wealth is like momentum. Once you get it moving, once you start making the right plays, it stops feeling like luck and starts feeling like inevitability. I had spent months playing the long game, investing in crypto, stocks, and early-stage companies I knew would explode. But I also knew something else. Money sitting in an account wasn't real power. It was just numbers on a screen. Real power? That came from assets. Real estate was my next move. I started small. A single undervalued property, a rundown condo that had been sitting on the market too long, its owner desperate to sell. I knew the neighborhood. I knew that in a few years, this area was going to skyrocket in value. New businesses would move in, infrastructure would improve, and what looked like a throwaway investment now would become prime real estate. The price was low, lower than it should have been, and I pounced on it. Renovations took time, but I didn't need anything fancy, just enough to make it appealing. A coat of paint, some modern fixtures, the kind of upgrades that looked expensive without actually costing much. Within 2 months, I flipped it for double what I paid. That was all the confirmation I needed. I started expanding aggressively. Every new deal was calculated. I wasn't throwing money around blindly. I knew which cities would see a tech boom. I knew which areas were going to be gentrified. I picked up properties cheap, flipped some, rented others. My holdings grew, my cash flow increased, and suddenly, I wasn't just playing in the market. I was owning parts of the city. That was when the invitations started coming. When you start making serious money, people notice. I wasn't the wide-eyed, struggling kid I used to be. I wasn't some desperate man clinging to a toxic relationship, hoping someone would believe in me. I wasn't looking for validation anymore. Now, I was the kind of man people wanted to impress. Exclusive events, investment summits, private networking parties where real business happened, not the public handshake deals, but the backroom conversations that determined who controlled what. These were the rooms I needed to be in. I wasn't interested in flashing my success. I let results speak for themselves. I dressed sharp, spoke little, and listened more than I talked. That was the difference between new money and old money. The ones who truly held power didn't need to show off. They moved quietly, efficiently. I learned fast. Connections formed quickly. Real estate moguls, hedge fund managers, tech investors. I built relationships that mattered. The kind that opened doors before I even knew I needed them opened. These weren't people I would have ever had access to in my old life. But now I belonged here. And that's when I started hearing whispers about Ethan Carter. Ethan had built his fortune fast, too fast. I had watched from the sidelines in my last life, thinking he was some financial genius. He had the cars, the penthouse, the magazine covers that called him a rising star in the investment world. But I knew the truth now. It was all smoke and mirrors. Ethan wasn't a financial genius. He was a con man running out of time. I remembered when it had all come crashing down. The Ponzi scheme he had built, hiding behind fake investment firms, promising impossible returns, robbing Peter to pay Paul. It had been brilliantly disguised, right up until it wasn't. And when it collapsed, it took everything with it. Investors lost millions. Lawsuits piled up. The SEC got involved. And Ethan? He went from untouchable to disgraced overnight. Back then, I had just been a bitter bystander, watching from the outside, too consumed with my own failures to enjoy it. But now I had front row seats to his downfall. And unlike before, I wasn't going to just watch. I was going to accelerate the collapse. Vanessa still hadn't realized what was happening. For her, life was still perfect. She was still on the arm of a wealthy man, still posting pictures of expensive vacations, still convinced she had won. She didn't see the cracks forming beneath her feet, but she saw me, and she was starting to wonder. I heard it from mutual acquaintances, from whispers in the same circles I now moved in. Vanessa was asking about me. Not openly, not desperately, yet, but she had noticed the shift, the new apartment, the growing wealth, the way my name was suddenly coming up in the same places Ethan's used to. She must have told herself it was just a coincidence, that I had gotten lucky, that it was temporary success. She had already made her choice, after all. She had traded me in for an upgrade, and she was still winning. Or at least, that's what she thought. Because soon, Ethan's world was going to come crashing down. I spent weeks pushing things along, quietly, subtly. I knew exactly where Ethan's weak spots were. I fed information to the right people, investors, journalists, regulators. Not enough to be obvious, but just enough to stir doubt. His empire was built on confidence, on people believing in him. The moment cracks appeared, the moment people hesitated, it would all unravel. And I knew the exact moment when the first domino would fall. The best part? I didn't even have to get my hands dirty. I simply let history repeat itself. The first article dropped on a Wednesday. A respected financial journalist published a deep dive into Ethan's investment firms, questioning his reported profits, pointing out red flags in his balance sheets. At first, it was just speculation, but that was all it took. Investors started asking questions. Money started pulling out. Ethan scrambled, trying to reassure people. But the moment doubt crept in, it spread like wildfire. By Friday, the markets were buzzing with rumors of fraud. By the following week, lawsuits were being filed. And Vanessa? She was starting to panic. I knew the exact moment it hit her. She had always carried herself like she was untouchable, like she was above people like me. But when I ran into her at an event, the mask was slipping. "Jake," she said, forcing a smile. "Wow, you're really everywhere these days." I looked at her, really looked at her. The tension in her shoulders, the slight worry in her eyes. She was scared, not of me, but of what was happening behind the scenes. She hadn't left Ethan yet, not yet. She was still clinging to the fantasy that it would all blow over, that he would fix it. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Instead, I just smiled. "Yeah," I said, swirling the whiskey in my glass. "Funny how things work out." I walked away before she could respond. Let her watch, let her wonder, let her realize too late that she had bet on the wrong man. The night was electric, the kind of evening where power and money mixed in a way that made the air hum. My penthouse was packed with the right people. Investors, tech founders, real estate tycoons, people who controlled industries with a handshake. The music was low, sophisticated, just enough to set the atmosphere without drowning out conversation. This wasn't just a party. It was a statement. From the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled below us, glittering like it belonged to me. In many ways, it did. I had built something undeniable, something untouchable. And tonight? Tonight was about celebrating my success. That's when she walked in. Vanessa. I spotted her the moment she stepped through the doors, though she tried to blend in, acting as if she had every right to be here. She had dressed for the occasion, of course. Expensive, elegant, calculated. But she looked different now. Not in the way she dressed or carried herself, but in the way she moved. The unshakable confidence she used to have? Gone. I sipped my drink, watching her scan the room until her eyes locked onto me. She didn't hesitate. She started walking toward me, slipping through the crowd like a snake weaving through tall grass. The last time we had spoken, she still had Ethan. She still had security, status, a future that didn't involve regretting me. But now, Ethan's world had crumbled. His Ponzi scheme had imploded spectacularly. He was fighting off lawsuits, media scrutiny, and financial ruin, and from what I had heard, Vanessa had been cut loose the moment things got messy. She had bet everything on a man who no longer existed, and now she was looking for a new opportunity. I let her come to me. "Jake," she breathed, her voice soft, familiar. "I've been meaning to talk to you." I took my time, letting my gaze flick over her, letting the moment stretch just long enough for her to feel the weight of it. Then I smiled, slow and easy. Vanessa. Her shoulders relaxed, just a little. A flicker of relief. She thought she had an opening. She let out a small laugh, shaking her head like she couldn't believe we were here, like we were two old friends reconnecting instead of former lovers standing at opposite ends of a battlefield. "This place is amazing," she said, glancing around. "I always knew you'd do well for yourself." I raised an eyebrow, amused. "That's funny. I remember you saying I had no ambition." A slight flush rose to her cheeks, but she recovered quickly, tilting her head. "I was young. I didn't know any better." She reached out, fingers brushing against my wrist, a calculated touch meant to remind me of what we used to have. "But I see you now, Jake, and I realize I made a mistake." There it was, the opening move in her game. I could have laughed, could have shut her down right then and there. But where was the fun in that? No, I wanted her to feel it first. The hope, the possibility, the idea that maybe, just maybe, she could slide back into my life, back into wealth, back into security. So I played along. I gestured to the bar. "Come, have a drink with me." She smiled, radiant, and followed. I poured us 2 glasses of one of the finest wines money could buy, something that cost more than her entire rent back when we were together. I watched her closely as she took the glass, her fingers delicate against the stem. "This feels nice," she murmured, taking a slow sip. "Just talking again, like old times." I let her talk, let her reminisce, let her believe. She leaned in closer, her voice softer, her touches lingering. She thought she was winning me back. And then, just as she was settling in, just as she was starting to relax, I set my glass down and met her gaze head on. "Vanessa," I said, my voice calm. She smiled, expectant. I leaned forward slightly. "You're just another name on my blacklist." For a moment, she didn't react, didn't process it. Then I saw it. The flicker of confusion in her eyes, the slight stiffening of her shoulders. "What?" I leaned back, letting my smirk grow. "Did you really think I'd take you back? That after everything, after the way you walked away, I'd just forget?" Her face paled. "Jake, that's not—" I lifted a hand, and before she could say another word, security stepped forward. 2 men dressed in sharp suits, appearing at either side of her like they had materialized from the shadows. Vanessa's breath hitched. "Jake," she said, her voice shaking slightly now. "Don't do this. Let's just—" "You don't belong here," I said simply. Then I nodded to security. The moment they took a step forward, she panicked. "Jake, wait!" She grabbed at my arm, desperation creeping into her voice. "We had something real. I made a mistake, but people change. You can't just—" "But I could, and I did." She tried to struggle, but security was firm, professional, and completely unmoved by her pleas. People were watching now, powerful people, the kind whose opinions shaped reputations. They saw Vanessa being escorted out of my penthouse, her face red with embarrassment, her protests useless. This wasn't just about rejecting her. This was about making sure she was never taken seriously in these circles again. By the time she reached the elevator, her voice had shrunk to a whisper. "Jake, please." I met her eyes one last time. "Goodbye, Vanessa." The elevator doors slid shut, and just like that, she was gone. The moment passed. The party continued. The music played, glasses clinked, conversations resumed. Vanessa had always believed she was irreplaceable. She had believed I would always be chasing her shadow. She was wrong. I turned back to my guests, shaking off the remnants of the past like dust from an expensive suit. There were deals to make, opportunities to seize, empires to build, and Vanessa, she was just another forgotten name.